Hey, welcome back to Pave the Way podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck, and today I have the one and only, actually, not before our conversation, I think there's another Mike Hambright out there, but the one and only real estate investing flip nerd, Mike Hambright on the show. Mike, thank you so much for hopping on today. It is a
Yeah,
true
buddy.
honor to have you on my show, man.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here. I've been looking forward to it for a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I've known Mike for a couple years now. I'm part of his Investor Fuel Mastermind, and Mike is a heck of a dude. He's got a ton of experience, been buying houses for a while. He's got a great background on how he got into real estate, what he did before that, which is quite interesting. So if you want to learn how to be a good networker, this is the show to listen to today. We're going to talk about how networking is really important and what Mike has done like tactically to actually grow his brand, his network, and how to really just quite frankly do more deals through networking. So Mike, before we get into the nuts and bolts today, would you mind sharing your background on kind of who is Mike Hambright, where is he from, and what did he do before he made the leap of faith into the real estate game?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been a real estate investor since 2008, so I guess it's coming up on a little bit over 11 years now. And it's a funny thing, in 2008 the market was kind of crashing around the country, or it's definitely taking a downturn depending on where you're at. But I didn't know that. I mean, I was a pretty smart guy. We didn't like time the market. It turned out that it was a great time to get in. But that was just circumstance. Like, we were getting in because I lost my job basically. So yeah, I was a corporate guy, kind of played I went to college. I was the first person in my family to actually go to college. So it was kind of a big deal. I really didn't have a lot of direction. I'm just trying to find my way, and wasn't happy with my first couple jobs. Just kept jumping around to some different kind of post-college jobs, and like started questioning, like, is this kind of all there is? Like, is this all the money I'm going to make? Is this, felt like professional because I'm like wearing a suit. I worked for a big bank, but I was like, this sucks. This sucks. So ended up finding my way and going back to graduate school. I thought, hey,
Really?
if I get an MBA from a top 20 program, then somebody else will want me. Like, that's how kind of college is, right? You're like trying to find ways to get people to want you, right? If you look at it
How do
that
I
way, it's the
become
truth.
more? Yeah.
It's the truth. How can I be? And when you're in school, the truth is dirty little secret about college is, they're effectively a factory, and they do better if they can recruit companies to come recruit you, and the whole thing just works. And so it's like basically like a dating service. And you're like, how do I get somebody to want to date me? How can I look the best to get somebody to want to pay me? Anyway, long story short is, after graduate school, even, I had a great job and then got fired one day, like out of the blue. And that company is a $5 billion company that's literally gone now. Like, it doesn't
Was it
exist.
Radio Shack?
Radio Shack, yeah.
Like your mind.
And so there are like 35,000 people that lost their job there. And then I went to work for another company that was flying high, and things were great for like 18 months. And then they filed for bankruptcy one day.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
was like, oh crap, here we are again. And my son had just been born, and my wife left her job. She was a consultant making more money than I was making, but she hated it. And we moved across the country for this job. And so I'm like, on this far off land, fairly new husband. We'd been married for a couple of years, just had a baby, like shit's getting real here. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, what am I doing here? It's like, what do we do? And I was like, just very jaded. Like, am I really going to go work for somebody else and have no control and just have this happen again in a couple of years? And that's the short version of the story, but, dove headfirst into real estate because I'd always been interested in it and just never done anything about it. Been to some training programs, went to some boot camps, but just never pulled the trigger on anything until I was kind of backed in a corner. It's like, I have to do something now. And so I'm going to bet on myself effectively.
Absolutely, man. So when you say you moved across, where were you originally living? And then how did you, because I know you're in Dallas now.
Yeah. So we were in Dallas. I'm originally from Illinois, but moved to Dallas a long time ago now. I'm not even going to say any. For a young guy like you, when I start saying numbers, it's like, you're going to realize like I'm like double your age almost. So, but yeah, so I've been in Dallas for a long time, but we did move away for a couple of years to the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay.
But we kept our house here. We rented it out. And so anyway, we knew we were coming back because we had no family there. Just didn't know it would be, 2 years versus 5 years or so. But
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you live in where were you in DC?
Arlington, yeah.
Oh,
Lived
in
Arlington.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
A little different than Dallas, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, holy crap, what's going on here? Yeah, it's
Right.
like
Right.
a whole other world. I love Texas, by the way. I've done a lot of
Yeah.
deals there. It's a great economy. I like how everything is like new in Texas. Like where I'm from in the Northeast, like I live in San Diego now, but like the houses are so old. Like you go down to Dallas, it's like an old house is like 1975, and I'm like, hey,
That's true. That's true.
1975.
There's
I'm
some
like,
that are a little bit older, but yeah, you're right. It's like just the boom, kind of the boom in the 80s is where a lot of these like 30, 40-year-old neighborhoods are, which is where
yeah,
we end up,
investing in.
doing a lot of business.
Yeah, totally, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you have the corporate job. So I want to kind of drill down there for a second. So what was like, the fact that you kept getting fired or not fired, but just let go. It's not fired. Like what's
I did get fired. I did get fired from my first job, and it was my dream job. Yeah, totally got fired. Yeah.
Really?
Here's the truth: is I worked. I worked basically for the CEO. I mean, directly. So it was kind of an unusual situation, but he got fired, and they're like, I was his right hand man. So they're like, well, yeah, you're going too, basically. It didn't go down like that, but truthfully, that's what happens in corporate America. Is until you're there, you don't really realize like the politics of everything. Yeah. And it sucks, and the truth is when you're in it, it felt like that was normal. But when I look back on it now, I was like, that was a shit show. It's just people like stabbing each other in the back and doing all sorts of stuff to just try to get ahead at that level. And anyway, my boss got fired. And then, within a month or so, I was always his outspoken right-hand man, but I had him as cover, and then I didn't have that cover anymore. And they're like, I was just next in line. But then shortly after that, the whole company started to crumble. So,
my goodness. So
there's a longer version of that story, but that.
Oh my goodness, maybe we'll talk about that next week in Texas. But anyway, so you get into the business. You obviously start buying some houses. So let's fast forward up to today, and then we'll focus on the main content of the show, which is the networking aspect of it. So, what does your business look like today? From a real estate perspective, and then we'll just kind of we'll get into some of your other businesses. You got, some internet businesses and the flip nerd and real stuff. So you're a serial entrepreneur. It's
not as simple as it used to be. I used to say, I'm a real estate investor. And now people are like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I've started to say, I'm a real estate entrepreneur. But just because there's a short version and there's a long version.
Yeah.
So, so I'm a real estate investor. I've flipped hundreds of houses here in DFW, wholesaling and assigning, but primarily was a rehabber, and we've done a lot of wholetailing, which we just talked about here a bit ago. And so I've built up a rental portfolio. So that's kind of another business for us. Over the past year or so, I've been involved in some pretty large multifamily transactions with my buddy Corey Peterson, the Big Kahuna. And we have another one on a contract right now that's going to be closing here soon. These are like $10 to $15 million properties. And I'm an active participant in those, active investor, and also helping raise money for those deals. And what else do I got? We got the Investor Fuel Mastermind. Is the thing that I love to do, honestly, more than anything I do is the Mastermind. And we've got I've been coaching for about 10 years, coaching and mentoring a lot of real estate investors over the years that have done thousands and thousands of deals. So pretty significant coaching programs over the years. And we recently launched something that I haven't really talked about publicly much at all. So we're kind of a done-for-you agency where we generate leads and we take calls for people. We manage their CRM, kind of the front end of a real estate investor's business. So we're doing that really just as we speak right now in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and look to roll that out. And actually, I'm going to start investing in some other markets myself here with that model as well. So
you're going to go virtual. You're going to take the gym.
Hey,
I love it.
Hey, man, you've been an inspiration to me. So I was like, why not? Why can't I do that?
That's right. I feel like everyone now loves the whole virtual model. And it's like, I think with technology, especially with a system, it's like, it's practically the same thing. You just got to have boots on the ground, or a really good system. And that's awesome. So for the listeners here, Mike is as they say, a seasoned veteran in the real estate business. Bought hundreds of houses.
He's an old dude. That makes it sound like.
So he's got a ton of experience. And something that's really unique about Mike, obviously with his experience, is that Mike is probably the best networker I know to this day. I mean, his Rolodex of people that he can call on is incredible. So we're going to spend a lot of time today kind of on how to become a really good networker. And Mike's going to share his story actually from kind of what he did to get from where he is now. We're going to backtrack all the way down to what he did to get started in terms of networking and growing his brand and his influence, and how he started doing his rehab lives and how that evolved into the next thing, and then that evolved into the next thing. And now he's got this empire today. And it's just quite cool to see how much he's grown. So Mike, let's kind of take it back, and I'll kind of let you kind of take the reins here and talk about, you started buying houses, you're doing well. And then you started to get more into the, you know, the teaching side, and like, you know, the way that you did it was very smart, strategic, and obviously very productive. So I'll just kind of let you kind of take over here and kind of let our listeners.
Yeah. And I'll try to sprinkle in some lessons for people to learn too. Cause I mean, there's things that I've done that I was like, hey, if you had, just like everything, like if you had to do over, I would have done it a little bit differently. Right. Yeah. And so there's some lessons there. You know, what really happened is I've always been kind of a social creature. And truthfully, I think over the years, I've actually gotten a little more introverted. I've actually been talking to my wife. My wife is more introverted than me for sure. We've been talking about that. It's like, I think I'm getting more introverted over time. And some of it is just like, I think I have a tendency, it's probably a business maturity thing. I like think a little bit more than I used to before I talk. But yeah, so, you know, when we left, I kind of talked about how I left the corporate world and went into real estate investing. And when you're a real estate investor, especially when you're just getting started, and honestly, when I started in 2008, there were some real estate clubs for sure, RIAs and stuff like that. Meetup, I don't think Meetup existed then. I think it took a couple more years where people started having Meetup groups. There weren't any Masterminds. That didn't exist. There were coaching programs. Those things have always existed. But like community, and really the truth is like, so a lot of social media stuff hadn't really taken off like it had now, right? I mean, it existed. I'm not trying to like say that, you know, we were riding on horse and buggies or anything like that. But truthfully, even just 10 or 12 years ago, like people just weren't as connected then as they are now. The tools weren't, even the ones that existed were not nearly as big as they are now. And, you know, our first year, we just cranked. I mean, I left, kind of the short version of the story is after I left those corporate jobs, I didn't jump right into real estate investing. I was dabbling with some stuff and trying to make some things happen, because even if you're entrepreneurial minded, like you don't have that mindset of like, at least I didn't, of like, if I don't do something right now, like it hurts me. Right. And kind of in the corporate world, you're just like, well, you know, stuff gets delayed, whatever. It's almost like, not in hindsight, it's like, well, it's not really your business. So you're not that worried about it. Yeah. So what happens is sometimes weeks and months go by and you're just like, shit, I don't have anything to show for my effort. Right.
Yeah.
And that's how the entrepreneurial world is. If you don't hunt, you don't eat. Right. And so I was trying to do stuff, and I've got a new baby. Our son was, at the time I lost the last kind of real job I had, he was 3 months old, 2 or 3 months old. Yeah. So it was crazy. Like, of course, now he's 12, you know, but we were trying to figure out, I was trying to figure out how to move forward. At the same time, we're trying to figure out how to be parents. Now I'll tell you, as the father of a 12-year-old, my wife and I are still trying to figure out how to be parents. Like, I don't think we have figured that out yet. But it just took me a while to get that kind of hustle mentality of like, if I don't do stuff today, nothing's going to happen.
What you killed. That's a
There was no momentum, right?
Yeah.
There was no momentum. I had no basis. I was starting from zero every day pretty much.
Yeah, yeah.
And just kind of flailing around, trying to find my way. I was trying to do some stuff outside of real estate investing, like online. And it just wasn't working. And it got to a point to where it was like, you know, I felt like I was disappointing my wife, you know, and I was like, okay, I got to jump into this. I got to go all in on something and figure out how to do it, find people to connect with, like this is kind of pre-mastermind stuff, but I got to find people to mentor me and show me how to do things. And I started doing that. And then in the next year we bought 65 houses. So we went from nothing, just cranked now.
Oh my God. That's insane.
Yeah.
And like rehab most of them, right? You weren't like,
yeah. I bet you we rehabbed 60, 70% of them. Yeah. So doing it the hard way.
In Dallas.
Yeah. But, you know, so we just cranked. And then what happened is, you know, a year, 18 months into this, started to kind of feel lonely, you know, because if you're like in a foxhole, like you're not really, we weren't very social. There were some real estate clubs, but you know, you go to them and it's like the blind leading the blind. A lot of time there's a whole bunch of people that don't know anything.
Yep.
And so then I did a couple things. Then I was like, okay, in hindsight, I didn't think like this, but I'm like, I need to be around more people like me. I need to find people like me. And what I found some comfort in helping people know what I'm doing. Like, I didn't really think of it as coaching, but I'm just like, hey, people are interested in this. Let me show them. And next thing you know, I'm like wholesaling houses to them, or could potentially raise money from them, or like things just started to, like, opportunities fell in my lap when I started to help people. when I kind of just started to show people that I knew and I didn't plan it that way, but it just worked. And it's like, that became a model, right? Of like, hey, if I help people and I show them how to do things, then good things happen to me. It was informal, but it got kind of more formal over time. So I started to sponsor a real estate club here that doesn't exist anymore. But for 5 years, I was a sponsor of this club, and I had a table, and I'm like answering questions and talking to them about things. And along the way, I came up with this idea of Rehab Live. And so I'm like, hey, we're rehabbing like a ton of houses every month. At any time, we're rehabbing a bunch of houses. And let me just invite people to come over and watch what we're doing. It was as simple as that. And so I started to build up a mailing list of people that would be interested. And we would effectively just say, hey, come over to the house 3 times. Come right at the beginning, like right when we close on it. Sometimes it was like the day before we close on it even. And then come a couple weeks later, when we're about halfway through, we've kind of cleaned it out and done all the demo and putting it back together. And then come a couple weeks later at the end when it's totally done and we're about to stick a sign in the yard and let's just talk about it, And it was just like, for as much as people like HGTV type stuff, it was like HGTV live with less drama, ultimately.
Yeah, without the dog and pony show. I love it.
Yeah. And so, it helped me build relationships with people, probably some level of trust. And it was fun. Honestly, I was going to houses anyway, and it started to kind of cure the issue that I had, which was like boredom, or, you just like, I don't have people like me around or people that I can talk to.
Lonely. It's very lonely.
It could be a real lonely business, right? I mean,
very lonely business.
Yeah.
Oh, people don't talk about that enough,
Yeah. It's the basis of my mastermind and my coaching programs now. I mean, everything that we do is like, we create networks of people that want to learn from each other, be around each other now. But at the time, I didn't know what to call that stuff, but I'm just doing stuff that felt good or was fun, Oh. And so that went on for a number of years. And then I was like, well, I'm only, then I started coaching people, and people were like, well, can you show me how to do this? And we started JVing on deals, or all sorts of different things started to happen. And then I kind of realized like, how do I do this outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area? And I hired this guy. I won't say his name because we're still connected on social media, but I hired a guy to follow me around for probably like 18 months or so. And he would just come in and I'd go check on houses. At that time, like, I'm much less involved in my rehabs now. I just do it over text messages. But back then I was constantly driving around, either looking at deals that we just got under contract to approve them, or checking on rehabs, or meeting people for lunch. And so I was kind of in the car like all day, or the truck all day.
Dealing all day.
Yeah. Hustling.
Mike in the trenches. Hustling.
Every day I'm hustling.
That's right.
And so I was just come with me, just follow me around. And every once in a while, I'm going to like explain what I'm doing. And we put together videos and started putting stuff online. And this is before, I'm a better internet marketer now, but I was terrible then. So I was creating all this content without really any way to know how to use it. We would just throw it up in places, and it was in hindsight, super wasteful, but it was a way to start sharing content, globally, I guess. I mean, not like I'm looking for anybody in other countries, but just to kind of put it out there, right? To take that kind of rehab live thing, we started to do rehab lives on video so we could share them with people. And so, yeah, it just kind of went from there. It went from that kind of escalating the coaching stuff that I was doing to coaching people all over the country. And, then that eventually that turned into a podcast. It's like, hey, that guy is like, half the time when I need the guy, he's asleep, or he didn't show up today or whatever. And I'm like, okay, how can I like eliminate, having too many cooks in the kitchen, and just talk to people online and share my knowledge online. And that's when the Flip Nerd podcast was kind of born. And it's crazy, but we're coming up on almost 6 years ago the podcast started. And and then I'll kind of pause here if you want to talk about it. We can talk about where
it's funny. I like how you're kind of sharing your whole story here, because like really, like it started from, you had the corporate thing, and that was kind of a roller coaster because these companies kept going out of business, and you were doing great, but it's like you can't control the big company at the end of the day.
Right.
Like, then you realize, okay, now you're buying a ton of houses, and you're making money. You're back doing what you were doing. Now you're even more successful. But it's like I want to really drill deep here on, like, it is a lonely business if you don't have other people to this with. And I think I suffer from, a lot of investors suffer from this, right? And like it's easier now because I'm in fuel, and investors know now there's networking groups online, there's masterminds, there's programs or whatever, but it's a really lonely business, especially when your environment, right? Your family and friends, especially initially, they think you're crazy.
Yeah,
Oh,
no doubt.
You can't go buy houses. What are you gonna go?
Yeah, why would somebody sell you their house at a discount? I was like, well, I don't know, but they do. I don't know why they do it, but they do it.
Exactly. Greg, does that real estate thing really work, Craig? How's your flipping houses business going? Like, I'm getting scolded, not anymore. But
now they ask you if you'll teach them how to do it, right?
Now they're investing their money with me. Now they're private. Like, oh yeah, ha ha ha. But anyway, it's a lonely business, and you just kind of started with the Rehab Live instead of, like, I think a lot of people, and this is like the big takeaway for people, is like, Mike didn't have this whole master plan, that he wrote down in his journal. I'm going to go from this to that to that to this to that. He's like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to do the Rehab Lives. I'm going to attract some people. I'm going to provide value for them. And then all of a sudden he turned that into a podcast, which allowed him to network with other people, which then created some more content, which created the Flip Nerd, Flip Nerd brand.
They're stair steps. Yeah.
They're little stair steps. And I think every time he would make progress, he would figure the rest out as he would go. He wouldn't know the answers to step number 10 when he was on step number 2. So obviously, Mike, I want you to kind of share how you really grew Flip Nerd through network. Like, how did you make Flip Nerd so successful, with the content and the deliverables, and like just your ability to create this massive network of people that know you and you know them, and you're able to really have that Rolodex of people that you can call on, and you can provide value for them. They provide other things. How did you really do that and grow this thing to such an empire?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, and I don't want it to sound like, there weren't a ton of mistakes made along the way, because there are. And I think just like everything we do, you have to get to a point to where you're going to make mistakes, and you just pivot. You just have to pivot and change or stop doing stuff sometimes. Yeah. And so the truth is for me, we all get into real estate investing for the opportunity of financial freedom and freedom of our time. And don't get me wrong, like, money is very important to me, and everything I do, I want to make money doing it. It has to have a business case. We talked about this a little bit before.
Yeah, we did.
But I got a little sloppy for a while. Honestly, some of my businesses were doing so well that when I launched Flip Nerd, we spent a lot of money that I could never get back, that if I had to do over again, I wouldn't have done. Like, insane amount of money building it technologically, and then eventually just throwing it away and rebuilding it and stuff like that. But so that's kind of the business side of it. We made some bad decisions, but the one thing that I'd say from the Rehab Live stuff to pretty much most of what I've done is trying to add value, trying to share good information and put it out there without always necessarily knowing where that's going to go, but just a concerted effort to be consistent, because we've been doing the Flip Nerd show for almost 6 years now. We've never missed a week. Like, sometimes, as a podcaster yourself, sometimes you're like, crap, I got to get a show out tomorrow. And sometimes I've got like 5 weeks of inventory in the bag. Right. So, and then you're gone for a couple of weeks. And you didn't record anything or whatever. Those are issues we have to deal with on the back end. But I would say, whether you have a podcast or not, just consistently finding ways to add value and help other people and put good vibes out there, right, has served me well over the years through building relationships with people and not always knowing where that's going to go, almost rarely knowing where that's going to go. But looking back on it now, it seems like it was a fine-tuned plan, but in some instances on the outside, I know, but it definitely wasn't that way. It was just always kind of doing the right thing, and it kind of feeds itself.
Such a good takeaway. It's always just lead. It's like, I call it just leading with value, right? Lead with value. Don't, put the information out, put the content out, do the Rehab Lives, do the podcasts. And then obviously, you said you made some mistakes business-wise, like, that you probably obviously not do now today, but
right.
At the end of the day, the content was still out there, and your ability to eventually monetize that, came down the line.
Sure.
Right. And that's like the big thing, is the consistency thing, right? Like, it's got to be consistent. You've been doing your show for 6 years, right?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Expert interviews. So, like, here's the thing I actually learned from you that I want to share with the listeners. I think this was at one of the Fuel events. You said, like, just putting out content on the internet, social media, whatever the case is. A lot of people, they're like, they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. Like, and it's a little overwhelming for people, especially when you're vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there. You don't know what the feedback loop's going to like kind of look like. And you shared something at the Fuel meeting. You're like, make a schedule of all the content that you're going to put out, like topics on like Evernote, or write it down. And then every week you just go out and that's what you're going to talk about for the week. And the next week. So I've been implementing that for over a year now, if you count my book reviews, and the amount of just feedback I've gotten just from, well, number one, consistently scheduling that content to go out on a weekly basis, and then having my audience and your audience, obviously with your content, know that they're good for a new, content, new content from whoever's producing it, your podcast, my podcast, social media posts, book reviews. And you build that, the thing with the podcast is like you can build that relationship with someone and they've never even spoken to you. They've just heard your show for.
Yeah. They just trust you. And it's weird. It's weird. Now it depends on, if somebody's listening to this and they want to have a podcast or do coaching or whatever, what we've kind of said so far is maybe a little more relevant, but I can tell you, so I recorded we did a live webinar today with Trevor Mock, who's an Investor Fuel member as well, for our Investor Fuel members. It was kind of a live, Zoom call where we do these things called power chats. And so even if your business is buying houses, and that's why you're here, is listening for tips on how to buy houses, we talked about the same thing with Trevor about creating content. And, what Trevor shared with us today is, the importance of building up your authority and building content. And specifically video content, because none of us want to write, and nobody wants to read, right? They just want to listen to videos. But we talked about that of, one of the things I shared is like, I separate the ideation content from like creating it. And the reason is sometimes I'm like, I've got some freedom today. I could record a couple of videos. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do it on? And I can't think of what I want to do it on. But then sometimes you're in the shower or you're somewhere and you have like 10 ideas, right? And so you're like, I think it's important to have some time to just come up with ideas of content, stuff that people want to hear. And if it's house buying is why you're creating content, you put it on your Carrot site or whatever. It's like, talk about how you solve problems for people going through probate situation in Garland, Texas, how you solve problems for a fire damaged house in, Chicago, Illinois, whatever your market is. Just come up with like a matrix of the cities you serve and the problems you solve. And you can start to come up with a whole list of like content that you'll create. And so, no matter what your business is, house buying or coaching or any of those things, podcasting, anything, it's just to kind of break up the kind of ideation from the creation ultimately.
So, and what you shared there right there about the actual house buying business, that is the best way to build that local, like real estate celebrity, as Chris Chico says, like how to become a celebrity in the real estate market. It's like, if you can just schedule, this is like an actionable tip for people listening to this. If you can just schedule, okay, from 2 to 3 on Tuesdays, I'm going to make my content, right? You just literally go in like, sell my house fast, New York, get out of foreclosure, New Jersey. And you literally make videos on that. You put those on the internet. I mean, you're going to really grow your presence and people are going to see your videos. And like a mutual friend of ours, Brad Chandler, he's all over the internet. He's like number one in like every city in the country because he's been putting out that type of content, the express home buyers. And now I was on the phone with him the other day and he's like, I got 60 leads today in other markets. Right. I don't do with them.
Yeah. Trevor was kind of giving the analogy today of like building a brick wall. He's like, and sometimes people get frustrated. They're like, well, I don't really like being on video, or like, the thing is nobody cares. I think nobody wants polished. The type of people that, the type of sellers that we sell are like, they're usually distressed, right? Like they don't, or their house is distressed or their situation is distressed. They're not looking for somebody in a tuxedo to buy their house, right? They're like, just be yourself. You're either gonna resonate with them or they're not, right? And so like, just be yourself. Just what they want to know is, are you trustworthy and can you help me with this problem? Not what are you wearing, or do you have a pimple on your face, or you stutter when you said something. Like, that's the real world. And so I think, just grabbing your phone and just being like, hey, I'm just going to create some videos on these topics. And, back to the rehab live stuff, or even what you're doing for creating seller content, like to attract sellers, this is one of the little nuggets that I learned along the way, is like, create your content, do your networking, all those things, kind of like on the job it's on the job development. Like, go to a house that you just bought or a house that you're wholesaling and create like 10 videos there. Like, make sure the lighting is good. And that's like literally all that matters, is just talk about how you help somebody solve a problem, or talk about if you're trying to attract wholesalers, like how they can contact you to buy houses like this. Like, just think of like who your customer is and the content you're trying to create, and use that platform, which is our houses. So I talk about doing the rehab live, like, come watch us rehab a house. So I have another buddy that used to do this at like disgusting houses. He would like, pull up at lunchtime. He'd tell everybody, come to this house. We're going to have a cookout. He'd bring a bunch of hamburgers and hot dogs and a cooler of beer. And they'd be in this disgusting house in the backyard, like cooking some stuff. And while he's there, he's trying to build his buyers list and sell the house ultimately. But just, that's your platform, is the house. That's what we do, right? So just use that in your process of creating content.
I got to do that next time I fly back to New York, go to a
Yeah.
couple of properties I own and just freaking have a barbecue.
Yeah. Well, just like our buddy, you know, Jason McDougall,
Yeah.
he's going live all the time. He's always in front of a house, right? He's at a house, or let's go look at this house,
Yeah.
or just, you guys have done some of that together.
Oh, yeah.
Just, that's your platform, is housing. It makes more sense to do that than in a studio, right? I mean,
Yeah. With a tuxedo on, as you said earlier.
right.
I'm gonna buy your house. No, that's awesome. It's so true. And it's like, the key is like, and I think something that I want to, you know, before we shift into the second part of the show is like, you know, you don't have to be a guy who's done 1,000 houses to start putting out content. Like, I have 1,000 houses. You know, it's like, you can start whenever. You could, even if you're a new investor, you can say like, hey, I'm going to document my journey from never doing a deal to doing a real estate deal. And now all of a sudden, once you've done your first deal, someone who's never done real estate can watch all of your content and they can learn exactly from your journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perceived as the expert. So that, you know, you can never really get in trouble by sharing valuable information.
Right.
So
And if your customer is a seller, like you're trying to attract sellers, you never have to say, well, I haven't done my first deal yet, but here's how I'm going to help people. Just don't lie about anything, but just be presumptuous. Like, we help people in these situations because you're going to. So, you know, don't misrepresent anything, but you don't have to say, I've never done a deal before and I'm looking forward to helping my first victim.
my first customer, I'm going to wholesale your house. You know, it's
right.
funny. It's funny. And even to add on that real quick is like the whole people give you, oh, I've never done a deal before. What do I do for testimonials? You can have someone leave a personal testimonial for you.
Credibility testimonials.
Exactly.
Why you're trustworthy.
Yeah. Mike's a great guy. He's helped me out before in the past. You know, I totally recommend working with him. He's a great person. You know, you can have that on your website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My buddy has a junk removal business, and like when he got started, that's what he would do. I gave him a personal testimonial. Anthony's a great guy. He's a trustworthy person. I've known him for years. He's going to do what he says he's going to do. And that's not lying. It's social proof. So Mike, as we get into the second half of the show here, I want to just talk about the power of masterminds and like how they really can really change the way investors can, you know, grow their business, whether you're a new investor and you want to scale into being consistent, or if you're like an investor who is maybe doing a couple deals a month, they want to go to higher volume. Or I just think let's just focus the back half of the show on the power of masterminds and how you've gotten value from them in the past, and how investors can really use this thing that, you know, everyone talks about now. Everyone's got masterminds, they're all over the place, but like, why are they so effective? Like, let's cover like the two pillars on why they're effective, value you've gotten from them in the past.
Yeah. And I think it depends on, you know, what you need, right? There are a lot of different masterminds. That word is used broadly now. Sometimes it really means coaching, but it's like, they call it a mastermind, or there's like high level masterminds that you're around your peers. Right.
Yeah.
And so I would say it depends on what you're trying to accomplish and where you are in your kind of career, your life cycle of your business. Right. So I coach a lot of people in our Flip Nerd Investor Coaching Program, and in those venues, like we have a coaching call this afternoon, for example, that we do via Zoom. We have a physical meeting where we meet once a month, and we kind of mastermindy type stuff, but I'm the expert there. So it's one way for the most part, lots of questions and I'm giving all the answers. And so there's that. It's not really peer-to-peer. I mean, not like I'm looking down on anybody, but it's just a different venue based on where they are.
Platform.
In a peer-to-peer type mastermind, you're around other people like you. If it's done right, it's curated to where, you know, like in our Investor Fuel Mastermind, we have a gold group and we have a platinum group. And the gold group is people that are doing 10 to 50 deals a year, and the platinum group is 50 deals and above. And it's because, you know, sometimes people in our gold group are like, they feel like they're at the kids table or whatever. We're like, hey, it's not that it's that. Like, your problems are most similar to the people at this level. Like, you know, you just have different set of problems. And when your business grows, we'll always have problems. It's just different kinds of problems. And it's helpful being around people that have those same problems that you can talk through, right? So it's important. Sometimes we want to be in a mastermind or something that's like over our head, because it's like, I can say I was there, or I feel like I'm, you know, amongst kings or whatever it might be. I don't know. But the truth is like, you really need to be there to take your business to another level. And so don't pay a lot of money to be in something that is over your head, that's not surrounded by people that are having the same kind of problems as you at that stage. But no, I think it's such a valuable thing. I mean, I used to I've been to lots of other people's events and stuff. And early in my career or my business, I would try to like filling up notebooks, trying to absorb like everything they're saying or like document it. And now what I believe is I'm a nugget hunter. I'm like looking for a couple of those little nuggets because I can't go apply it all anyway. None of us can.
That is pure gold.
Give me a couple little nuggets here that are going to like just make my business double, or impact it in a significant way that are not that hard to execute. And so I think that's the beauty of masterminds is once you get to that point and you're around people that drop a lot of gold nuggets, it's like, I'm just on the hunt for, what this person is going to share with me or, and on like kind of coaching events or implementation type events or whatever, like the beauty of a mastermind is that like an Investor Fuel, for example, is we're a community 365 days a year. Like people can we have a private Facebook group and we talk and stuff like that, but it's pretty common for people to just be picking up the phone, calling each other. I'm running up against this. I heard you talk about this before. Do you think you could help me with that? Or do you know this person? And so when you get in a really good group where people rely on each other and they start to become friends and families are traveling together and all sorts of stuff like that, it's not like 4 times a year we're meeting. Like our community exists year round and you have brothers and sisters that you can rely on. One of the things that we've bumped up against here lately is, our group is on like most of the others out there. I won't say there's a bunch of good groups. I'm not going to say anything bad about anybody. Some of them are ego driven and they're just like, people would never admit that their business is struggling. In ours, we're like, hey man, let's celebrate the good times. And when the hard times hit, like, let's get you out of that funk. Right. So let's talk about it. So we've had people that are in there sharing issues about, their wife doesn't support them anymore, or I'm buried in hard money right now and it's not looking good for me. It's like, don't hide that stuff. Don't be embarrassed.
Be vulnerable.
Be vulnerable, but not for the sake of any reason other than, hey, your brothers and sisters are here to help you through that hard time, because we can add way more value helping somebody through a hard time than giving them high fives and pats on the back when the time's good, right?
Yeah, no, it's what you said earlier. I mean, all that stuff is absolute gold, but it's go into the mastermind or any type of event, being a nugget hunter, begin with the end in mind. Say like, okay, what's my intention going into this meeting right now? What do I need? Because you're going to get a fire hose of information. Everyone's business is different. Everyone's doing sort of different things. But if you go in there saying, hey, my objective is to find a way to get my marketing to be more profitable. And those are the questions I'm going to ask. I'm going to find the people in this group who are very good at this type of marketing. And I'm going to sit down. I'm going to ask them specific questions. And that's what my intention is. If you can take that and then go back and implement that into your business, you're going to be much, much, much more better off than being like, oh, I'm going to take all this information. I'm just going to be sitting here and my head's going to explode,
or overwhelmed because none of us can implement. None of us have so much free time that we could go like start over every quarter. Like you got to like find the little things that move the needle.
No, absolutely. It's so powerful. And it's almost like, here's one more thing on that. And then we'll start to wind the show down is like, I remember the big thing for me, there was I think the big turning point for me, and I haven't been in the business as long as you, but once I started hanging out with people who were doing more deals than me, I just started doing more deals, not because of voodoo law. It was because now, like, in order to hang out with them and be at their level and provide value to them, I needed to start taking the actions that they were taking to where they would want to hang out with me, or so where I could be in a position to provide value for them. And all of a sudden, month over month, I would start doing better in my business. And like all of a sudden I was marketing more. I was getting better at sales. I was, and it just starts to change when you're hanging out with winners, right? Like,
that's right.
The average of, that the whole Jim Rohn quote, you're the average of the 5 people. It's true. Like it gets,
no doubt.
It's like everyone beats that one to the ground. Like, oh yeah, but it's true. Like if you are a new investor and you get locked into a room with Mike, myself, John Martinez, and a bunch of other people doing a bunch of deals, you can't help but be successful. Or it doesn't have to, just anyone in general. Like you're going to, by default, elevate your game because you're going to be influenced by them, the behaviors, the actions, all that stuff. It's just so important. So Mike, I mean, I think we really drilled that one home.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
It is true. Powerful. It's like, there's just this, once you see other people, once you're around other people that are doing it, it's almost like osmosis. It's like, well, not to say anything bad about people you're around. You could say, well, because the truth is like the most successful people that you know in this industry, right? They figured that out. Like they didn't come out of the womb like flipping houses and like
No.
stacking cash and stuff. They're just like, they figured it out through trial and error. And when you're around other people doing it, you learn from their mistakes. It's just like, almost like osmosis. It's just like, of course I'm going to operate at this level. Like that's what we do. Right. And so it's just, it's weird, but in it, let's be honest, we all do a little bit of self-sabotage on ourselves too. We're like, oh, maybe this doesn't work anymore, or maybe whatever. And you start to get around other people that are winning. And you're just like, that stuff goes behind you. And you're like, hey man, of course this is how we do it. These are the little nuggets I need to move ahead. And you don't question whether it's possible anymore. You know it's possible because you're surrounded by people that are doing it.
Oh, absolutely. It's powerful stuff. So as we wind the show down, Mike, I want to ask you a quick question. What are your top 2 favorite books that you've read that have had?
Oh shoot, I should have prepared for that.
Let me see what's on. Curveball, man.
I'm trying to see what's on my desk here.
An old PM curveball for you, or just in general, like stuff that you've read in the past that you could say, wow, that book really, it doesn't have to be like your current reading list, but just a couple books that you'd be like, man, those books really made an impact in my life.
Yeah, you put me on the spot here, Greg. I don't, somehow I'm drawing a blank because we've been recording videos for a few hours here. But, so of course, I'd have to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Like there's just no way. Now I don't agree with everything. But there's some really good things in there that kind of teach you like, there's another way to make money, which is what I didn't know in the corporate world. It's like, we just kind of follow this path of like chasing paychecks. And when you start to realize, that there's a lot of other ways to make money, and it's important to be able to build up revenue that's, passive if you can get there once you get there. So that's a great book. And I think, I also have to say I've been listening to a lot of Think and Grow Rich stuff lately, and it's really kind of inspired me. And I've listened to it in the past, and lately we've been, my wife got a couple of like, this is gonna sound old, but she got some CDs because she was at Half Price Books and ended up buying some CDs, actual CDs. The funny thing is her car doesn't even have a CD player, so she's like,
I was gonna say mine doesn't have.
She's got a new car. Yeah, I have a new car too, and mine does have one. Mainly for the purpose of playing DVDs. But anyway, Think and Grow Rich, which I've also read before, is a great book. And I think here's the truth, is in real estate investing or any business that we're in, the information, the knowledge is out there, right? What really keeps us and holds us back is mindset stuff, right? And so until you realize that the main problem is in your head, like anything's possible. When you start to think of like guys, like you've heard, I'm going to screw up any quote I try here, but guys like Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, all these guys, they have 24 hours in a day, just like the rest of us. Like everything that they've created was not from their own hands, right? It was from their mind and being efficient of creating tools and processes. But when you start to look at some of those guys and what they've accomplished, whether your goals are that high or not, we can accomplish way more than whatever it is we're doing right now. The only thing that's in our way is our mind.
That is an absolute gold nugget. We'll end with that. So Mike, it's been super awesome having you on the show. So if people wanted to find out more about you, if they wanted to get in touch with you or find out about some of the stuff that you have going on, whether it's Investor Fuel or some Flip Nerd coaching, what would be the best way for them to get
in touch? Sure. Yeah. If you want to connect directly, the best way is on Facebook under Mike Hambright. Now we kind of joked about this earlier. There apparently are some other Mike Hambrights out there. One guy that is not me, that's in prison and has a swastika tattoo on his chest. It's not that Mike Hambright. That was crazy when I found that out here recently. But it's like ML Hambright is my handle on Facebook. Mike.Hambright on Instagram. And if you want to connect with any of our stuff, our shows and a lot of our content is on flipnerd.com. And you can learn more about Investor Fuel, the mastermind that Greg's part of, and a lot of other amazing folks. Just go to investorfuel.com.
Awesome. I'll have all them in the show notes. Mike, thanks so much. It was super fun. And
thanks for the opportunity, Greg. I appreciate it.
See ya.
Take care.